I'm the best there is at what I do. But what I do best isn't very nice.
What the idea is that this dolly is their car moving.
Oh, that's correct.
And then as it sees you, it comes to a stop. Like, what the hell is that?
Hugh and I think it was X2, talked about the Japanese story, the Silver Samurai and Wolverine's love story with Mariko. Doing that, spinning that off and doing that as a standalone movie. We then went to Fox, and Fox liked the idea, they rightfully so, said you should set the roots first. Set down his origin so everybody knows who he is, where he came from, how he got the adamantium in him.
The fans of the X-Men movies know Wolverine as a character who has a certain badass attitude and is a bit of a loner, but is also quite compassionate. What they don't know is where those conflicting personality traits come from. That's what Hugh and I wanted to explore in this movie. What is the origin, not just of how did he get his claws, which is a sort of plot origin, but also how did he come to be the personality that he is?
I think Logan is your classic outsider. He's a man of few words. I always think Dirty Harry, I think Mad Max. I think in the original Mad Max, Mel had something like 11 lines. You felt for him, you rooted for him, everything. He hardly said a thing. These characters are intrinsically mysterious, they're likable, and there's a fantasy element where part of you just would love to be them. I come with you, I'm coming for blood. No law, no code of conduct. They do what they want to do on their terms, and they don't give a stuff what anybody says or thinks about them. I mean, there's something just incredibly attractive about that.
He's a tragic hero, almost an anti-hero. You know, he has no memory, so he has no life to relate to, and the animalistic side of him is very attractive. He's fearless and therefore unpredictable, and I think as a movie character, as a presence, that's just so mesmerizing, a character that you don't know what they're going to do.
This is a beloved character precisely, I think, because he has greater emotional range than many other traditional comic book characters.
The origin story, certainly for a superhero, is incredibly important because it shows the audience who they were before they are this legendary character.
Action!
I always felt through the X-Men movies that there was a definitive movie to be made. X-Men 2 covered in a small way the origins of Wolverine. So again, I'm like, okay, this is not completely new. We have to now show it in more detail. We have to see Wolverine in his full complexity. He has some qualities and certain aspects to him that are sacred and are right. Number one, he's badass. And I don't think in X-Men 1, 2 or 3, we've had moments, I don't think he's been badass enough.
There's a tremendously famous line that I'm sure every fan knows that Wolverine has, where he says, "I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do best isn't very nice." And I found that line particularly intriguing. A sort of superhero with a certain degree of self-loathing and uncertainty about his nature.
I feel he's a little deeper and darker in this movie than he was in the other three. He's a very serious killing machine. Hugh, by nature, is a sweetheart. You never met a nicer guy. And I think initially it took him a while to find the loner, the outcast, the sometimes miserable guy that Logan can be. And then movie after movie, he went there. This time, rather than playing off a familiar group, it was incumbent upon him to find all that himself and carry that on alone.
My mantra on this Wolverine film to everybody who's involved in it is that we have to exceed expectations. We can't just do another really good movie. It's got to be that much more. We've got to make him tougher, rougher, we've got to make the action bigger, brighter, all of that. I wanted everything to be better. With all the X-Men films, because I was doing a project before, I never felt that I'd quite got what I wanted. I'd never had him looking exactly as I wanted him to look. I always had this image in my head that didn't seem to appear when I watched the final film, and I wanted him to look a little frightening. I didn't want him to look like, wow, he's good shape, cool. I wanted people to look at him like I remember looking at Robert De Niro in Cape Fear and just going, oh shit. this guy's freaky, this is scary. I wanted veins popping out. I wanted it to look animal.
We were talking about his diet and what he went through, and he said he was just waking up at 4 in the morning to have a protein shake. So he'd fix the shake before he went to bed, and he'd set his alarm, and he'd wake up and drink the shake, go back to bed, and then he'd have to wake up at 5 or 6 to work out. And he'd work out, and he'd come home, and he'd have like 12 egg whites and wheat toast, and that was the meal he got to look forward to for the day, because it's the only time he could have bread. Very, very, very dedicated.
Chickens, lots of steak, and all different types of protein shakes, and lots of training. Trying to make myself as strong as I can is important. The other thing that's really important is to not be injured, because you've got to do a lot of physical stuff in the film. It had to be very functional.
Action! The amount of discipline that he brings, he would rehearse with us for 2.5 hours a day, and that would be after he would hit his gym routine in the morning, and then he would do cardio at night. The type of training he did in the gym, the lifting, was incredibly hard. Now the routines that we put him through, the choreography routines, I would have to give my stunt doubles and my stuntmen an hour break afterwards because I would whip them like dogs. Hugh would walk out of there with a towel and a protein shake and be like, "See you tomorrow, mate." He learns choreography and retains choreography better and faster than anyone I've ever worked with. And he was faster than 90% of the stunt guys we had him working with. That guy is an incredible athlete. He did 98% of his own stunts. He did all of his own fighting. Everything. The only thing that he didn't do was the high flying and hard hitting wire work.
It's hard to play these kinds of characters unless you have some sense of physicality. He doesn't shy away from anything. He mixed it right up, and that feral quality that he went after, such a deep commitment to the character that's part of who he is. You know, if Hugh could shrink himself down a foot, he would.
The decision to put the bone claws in Logan came along with the script of going way back into his childhood. And those were hard to figure out.
ADI, who did the makeup for the show, developed these bone claws. They're a little different than the adamantium claws, so there was a lot of new design work that had to happen.
Logan's bone claws are revealed when he's a child. We looked at a lot of different reference material like rattlesnake teeth, especially baby rattlesnake teeth. They're kind of clearish, and then you see a vein or a nerve running through them, a kind of squiggly nerve. And we all really like that idea. There's an effect when the bone claw pops out, it's a little bit translucent, and then it goes opaque, almost as if when it hits the air, it starts to dry or mature or harden. We also had to then design the adult version of Logan's bone claws, and there was a lot of discussion there. And so we were sculpting away. We were making bone claw after bone claw, lots of different maquettes that we'd photograph from different angles and review and look. And so it was a round-robin process that went on for a while, and finally we landed on the look of the bone claws. These are cast out of a translucent urethane resin, so it's 2-part resin, and it gives a little bit of a light transmission, so it looks a little bit more like bone and less like, you know, the opaque metal.
Ooh, shiny.
The adamantium claws themselves were pretty much executed in the same way that they have been in the other films, because they've had 3 movies to perfect that, and they work quite well.
Today, we're going to witness medical history. Today, we're going to create Weapon X.
We decided that we should make the adamantium tank resemble the adamantium tank that we're all used to, but different than how we showed it in X-Men 2. We showed it a little shinier, a little cleaner, a little more experimental, a little more scientific, as opposed to the tank that Logan stumbles upon years later, which is all decrepit and filthy, and that's when Stryker explains a bit of what happened to him.
I know that the production design in there is not exactly the same as in the other X-Men. The reason for that is that just from an overall design point of view, I felt I could get more out of reconstructing that set because a lot more happens inside that adamantium tank set than happened in the earlier movies where they were just quick flashbacks. So I felt we needed more space, more volume. I needed people on different levels to look down on the tank. Whereas what happens in the other movie is it's kind of flashbacks to him in a tank. And the world around it, therefore, didn't have to be as elaborate. So it was decided pretty early on that we would take the liberty of, he's at Alkali Lake, here's our version of Alkali Lake.
Designing the mix of the three metals that make adamantium was high on his list, so you actually see them mixed together to form the metal, and it's a hot process. We have these big devices that are over Wolverine that basically drill into his skin and inject the bones and so forth of the adamantium. Hugh actually was lying in this tank with a little breathing apparatus, and the effects guys pumped in air and so forth to make the water look turbulent. The rigs themselves, they were all machined out of metal and so forth. They actually moved in. We didn't have needles on them because it was just too dangerous to have all these needles sticking into Hugh in the water. So we added those digitally later. And the close-ups of the needles in the head and so forth are all done in post. So when he first comes up out of the water, once he gets his adamantium, his body's driving these needles out of him, and he's healing rather rapidly. He gets shot in the head by Agent Zero, and for the first time, you see the adamantium under his skin.
Hugh loves this character. He truly loves this character. I think both of us have a far greater understanding and respect for why fans love these characters than we knew before we came into this world.
If someone told me that when I did X-Men 1 or the audition for X-Men 1 there'd be a Wolverine movie, I probably would have laughed. I remember getting these sides and they had Logan's claws come out, snicked, S-N-I-K-T.
You're right in there?
Yeah, I'm fine. I had no idea of the effect the movie would have. I had no idea really about the comic book world and how beloved Wolverine is. I just, in the first one, was totally ignorant of all that pressure and just really enjoyed it. And I couldn't be more grateful or pleased in a way that the fans have liked it enough to warrant doing this film. When people say, will I do more? And I say, hey, I love this character, but if it's clear after this, people go, that's enough, I'm ready to hang the claws up. But, you know, if they want more, I'll probably give it to them because I love it.
Bye all.
That's a wrap.
I'm not your friend. I'm an animal who dreamed he was a man. But the dream is over, and the beast is awake. And I will come for you without mercy, because it's my nature. My name is Victor Creed.
The relationship between Wolverine and Sabretooth has always been tantalizingly withheld. It's always implied that there is a deep relationship between the two, but that the story has yet to be told.
The Sabretooth-Wolverine rivalry is one of the great rivalries in comic book history. They are perennial enemies and have been for many years.
Everybody knows from the comics that Sabretooth shows up and beats the crap out of Wolverine, usually on his birthday. I just felt like this is just too wonderful an opportunity to bring the antagonist and the protagonist into conflict on a level that is deeper than just, I don't like you. The fact that they are half-brothers gave such emotional power to the film.
We stick together no matter what, and take care of anyone who gets in our way.
Obviously, having come to the conclusion that the character Victor Creed was really going to be Wolverine's nemesis, if you like, we needed an actor of tremendous dramatic power.
Leo was one of the first people I had in mind to be cast. I love him as an actor. He's a friend of mine. I've worked with him before. He has that real weight and gravitas.
You my brother's new babysitter, John?
Creepy black coat don't scare me.
Really?
He can deliver a line. You know, he's a bad guy. He's a villain. You got to be able to deliver a line, and he can do it.
Not afraid of you, Victor. Not afraid of dying.
How do you know? You've never tried it before.
The difference is Victor Creed embraces his animal and Wolverine rejects it. Victor Creed goes towards it, becomes the animal. A very dangerous animal.
Victor! Don't even think about it.
Cut. Excellent. Bravo.
There was something about calling the character Sabretooth that sparked my imagination, because I didn't really know where to start, and I wanted to try to bring something to the character that would surprise people. And so for me, it was interesting to kind of look at what those big game cat elements were. And there's the thing about when you make eye contact with a big game cat that's caught in a zoo and it's trapped behind bars. And when you lock eyes with it, and it tells you that it can't get you now, but if it could, you would be Hamburger in a matter of seconds. That's a powerful look, and that, to me, inspired a lot of the motivation behind Sabretooth.
We did a tremendous amount of work to try to get Sabretooth to move in a cat-like way. It began with an idea that Gavin had, how powerful they are in their shoulders and the way they move and the way they would just catch up just barely to sort of trip the back end. And when the animal came down, then they can pounce and bite and do all their things.
The stunt guys came up with a real interesting way of running on all fours that felt very powerful and, you know, allowed him to scale buildings and take people out with a tremendous amount of force.
And there's a great scene where our two characters have our first major altercation, and it's in the bar, and we shot it in New Zealand.
And we shot this fight in a real logging camp in Dunedin. And if you would have been there to see this logging camp, which was really gritty and huge logs and log loaders, just machines, so that when we got on the set the very first time for Location Scout, I started to go, ooh, maybe we could throw him into that. Maybe we could break through that.
I love the bar fight scene because I love the way it starts out sort of tongue-in-cheek.
You got insurance in this place?
Insurance? No.
Too bad.
And we take you back to maybe Sergio Leone, the old Western. Two gunfighters.
Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in.
And I think Hugh's need to know from his brother, why have you done this to me? And Liev's wonderfully sort of flip way of saying,
Jimmy, you don't call, you don't write. How else am I supposed to get your attention?
Gives us an opportunity to be a bit tongue-in-cheek at the same time as then exploding into kind of rage. You don't want the scene to just be all it's how can you get the likeness in and then spin it into something really quite shocking.
Background, take it outside.
It took us about 2 weeks. We shot at 9. And both of us ended up pretty bruised by it.
Hugh and Liev did 95% of their own stuff. All the punching and kicking, they did all of that themselves.
Between he and I, both our stunt doubles were kind of there because insurance requires them to be there, and they rarely got used. And Liev, we would do a stunt, and Liev would look at me and say, "You going to use your stunt double?" And I'd say, "I don't know, are you?" And he'd be like, "I don't think so." And I said, "My stunt double's not even here, mate." You know, there was a little bit of game playing going on.
Don't touch your hair, whatever you do.
And Liev's not afraid to take a hit and to give one too.
Spent a lot of time watching big game cat footage on National Geographic, the way that the cats swat and the way that they grab and the way they pull it over, bite the neck. So this is where we got that whole vibe of grab, wrap, throw.
And then, of course, the point of that first fight sequence is that he gets the crap kicked out of him by his brother, because that's what drives him to say, okay, give me this adamantium.
When are you going to figure it out? We're not like them.
I'm nothing like you.
Sure you are.
For me, that's part of the fun of it, is sort of embracing these characters that we dream about and that we read about being played by mere mortals.
Nobody kills you but me.
Mutants. I don't hate them. I just know what they can do.
Few realize this, but we are at war.
I took an oath to protect this country. My name is William Stryker. I am not a monster. I'm simply a patriot.
It's a very difficult role to play, William Stryker. He was played brilliantly, I think, by Brian Cox in X-Men 2. So the characters come back because they're so linked. from the comic book lore.
In X-Men 2, you see him trying to get rid of them all, and in Origins, it's the beginning of that man. He hasn't gone over the edge.
You really hate them, don't you?
No, I don't hate them. After 20 years of working with mutants, I just know what they can do.
But you already see he's possessed, that they are the enemy. We need to build the perfect soldier to fight them. We need to kill them before they kill us.
We can win this war before it starts and save countless lives in the process. Preemptive action is the only action here, General.
I have a love-hate for mutants. My son murdered his mother, my wife, because of his nature.
We know about your son, Bill. We know he's a mutant, and we know he killed your wife.
So in this movie, we tip our hats to that idea by having that one moment at the refrigerator where there's this young boy that has the one blue eye and the one brown eye that the hardcore fans will know from X2 is the son.
Instead of X-Men 2 being the not-too-distant future, this is the not-too-distant past. So we needed to cast a younger actor.
Came upon Danny Huston, who I thought was outstanding in The Constant Gardener. We knew he could do the menace and the fooling of Wolverine.
Why didn't you tell me it was Victor?
I didn't know!
Why?
I swear on my son's life!
What I truly like about Stryker is the empathy he has and the intellectual manipulation that he can play on children that want to be loved or who are orphaned and lost.
Boys, tired of running?
What do you care?
I care because I know how special you are, how valuable.
The thing we need is someone who can be really, if you like, an intellectual about this. Danny and I talked about this a lot, and I think Danny's tremendous in this way, because we used to say, Danny, there is no way that you can confront their rage with rage. You'll get crushed. So you're almost in the kind of Aikido mode. It's, here comes the rage at you, and it's deflect and flatter.
Can't let him go.
You can't beat him, Victor.
Give me the adamantium.
Test came.
We had a deal! You would never survive the operation.
You're my favorite soldier, Victor. Be patient. Your time will come.
But he's able to understand mutants in such a way that he can control them. He believes he's able to conquer this crusade that he's on.
Take a look at Stryker's lapel for the hardcore fans in a moment in the hospital corridor. It has a little emblem. For the hardcore fans, they will know that, of course, William Stryker, in his original incarnations, was a hardcore evangelical preacher who morphed into this somewhat more crazed and dangerous man behind the Weapon X program.
Today we're going to create Weapon X. X. Roman numeral 10.
In a sense, feels that he's been given this opportunity to be an instrument of God. So he feels that he's doing the right thing. In any crusade, that gives your leader a certain feeling of purity, but he's anything but. He's, in a sense, the darkest force in the piece.
I took an oath to protect the American people from every threat, both foreign and domestic.
It finally really makes sense of how someone who is not a mutant, who doesn't have the powers, can still have the power over them.
Now bag him and tag him, Captain.
I've done some things. Hell, I've done some awful things. The kinds of things that haunt a man while he's asleep and mess with his mind while he's awake. And there's gonna be a special place in hell for me. You see, most people think our powers are a gift. But if it was up to me, I'll hunt the devil down myself and give him this gift back. My name is John Wraith, and I'm a mutant.
No, it seems like the opposite, because you can see it coming earlier than us. Remember?
Will.i.am playing the role of Wraith. He's incredibly authentic, incredibly creative and artistic, and obviously incredibly well known for his music abilities, his producing abilities, singing, playing, all of that.
There's a certain charisma that Will.i.am always showed when he was performing with the Black Eyed Peas. We watched some of the old videos of it and some footage of him on YouTube, and we just felt he had a certain presence. He is a smart guy, he wanted to do it, and I think desire is half the battle. And we thought he might be a really interesting choice.
Wraith is a teleporting mutant from Texas.
a hell of a boxer. He's cool, calm, a bit sketchy at times, so it's kind of weird to be calm and sketchy.
Interesting aspects to John Wraith. He's obviously paranoid. And if you're a guy suffering some sort of paranoia, if that manifests in a sort of mythical way as the ability to just get out of here if you need to, I think that's kind of a smart innovation from the creators of that superpower for him.
With Nightcrawler, there was a certain way that we brought his image on screen and took it away. So we had to do something totally different with Wraith. And this time we thought, all right, maybe what we'll do is we'll say his body literally gets disassembled down to the skeleton into pigments, and then all the pigments come back together again. So if you watched, if you slowed down every time he comes in and out of frame, you would see his skin goes and there's a skeleton and then it goes. And when he comes back, boom, there's a skeleton, there's skin, then there's Wraith.
Is there even a stretcher big enough to take this guy out of here?
It ain't him I'm worried about getting out of here on a stretcher. You're an asshole.
Now, Wraith, he's a bit of a wisecracker. He's a really cool dude, but he happens to be, in this film, the closest friend that Wolverine has. That's his buddy. And so there's not a lot of scenes to establish that, so we were very lucky that we did genuinely connect, but it's one thing to connect off screen that doesn't always happen on screen. In this case, it did.
I'm gonna go cover the back KC Rabbits.
I'm not a fight with him.
Yeah, right.
What? I get in fights with everybody?
Don't dogs kill cats?
Just go cover the back, will you?
In the film, he's a badass, but the majority of the time you see him on screen, he's with his best friend, Wolverine. So you don't really get to see how badass he is, but he's not to be messed with. You shouldn't have done that. Now I'm gonna kill you before Logan even gets a chance. This is like my first big film, so going from singing to acting, one would think it's easy, you know, because we act on stage all the time. But it's hard. I studied by watching a lot of badasses on the internet, right? I went online, I typed in badass, so they gave me a whole bunch of selection of badass dudes to mold my character after.
His approach to the world of acting, which he's fairly new to, was just really inspiring, because for him it was a new art form. For him it was something to learn, and he was probably the most enthusiastic person I've ever seen on set. He never walked back into his trailer. He was always there, he was always learning. He was a natural.
We all got our coping mechanisms.
Next cut is going to be a view down there. In order to come back to an island that's this side of the camera.
It took a lot for me to be directed because in my field of work, I'm always directing in the studio. Like I produce and write songs for people. And Gavin was patient. Do I want to do it again? Hell yeah. I would love to do it again. It was a blast. I learned a lot. I'm coming with you, Logan.
There's no redemption where I'm going.
I ain't asking.
Why are you up so early?
The character of Kayla Silverfox is played by Lynn Collins. She represents a place of peace and tranquility that he's found, and he's attempting to lead, if you like, a very normal, quiet, probably entirely unrealistically romantic life.
Hey.
All I kept imagining was, okay, if we're going to say Wolverine at the beginning of this movie is in love, what kind of woman's he in love with? It has to be someone who's down to earth and real and can actually hang out with a guy like this with a sense of humor, and that's Lynn.
Going home. Leaving the logging forest. Sort of the love story that started his character's journey.
It's fun. It's a nice counterpoint to the other sides of Logan that we've seen.
Real credit to your species.
It turns out that Kayla is a mutant. She's the power of suggestion if she's touching you.
Your boyfriend's got a big mouth.
I know. Big temper, too. So please let us pass. She can touch people and they do what she says, and also can touch and think something and somebody will do that as well. If there's anything that I thought about the power was that it's a thin line between the power and female persuasion.
How'd you do that?
Female powers of persuasion, it's a gift.
Oh, I see. Do you have those powers over me?
Well, you didn't stay in the car, did you?
We went back and forth on this. I mean, she had power, she didn't have power. She did, she didn't. There were many reasons to have both. And we finally settled on her having them. Then the question was, did Wolverine love her because she had planted that suggestion in his mind, or did he really love her? And we felt that gave us more drama, so that's why we stuck with her being a mutant.
It's classically X-Men in the way that, wow, well, what if the person that you fall in love with really simply has this power of influence? And what if they actually love you and want to say, I'm not influencing you? It's just one of those lovely little dilemmas that, you can think about for 10 minutes and drive yourself crazy.
She's also an unwilling team member, if you will, for Stryker.
Nothing motivates the men in your family like revenge.
And when she realizes the depth of what she's done, she has to come back to get Logan to forgive her.
My sister. They have my sister. Please, I didn't trick you into loving me. It was real for me too.
I didn't really understand how large the fan base was, but now I have an idea, and it's really extraordinary. As a girl, my sort of thing was, Barbie dolls. I wasn't a comic book girl, but it's amazing, the world. There's just these archetypal images and these huge emotional, heightened storylines to really let your mind go to those places, to exit your own life into this alternate reality. It was really fun.
I don't regret the things that I do. I'm proud of what I am. I'm proud of what I've done for my country. You'll sit there in judgment. I say to them, you got a problem with me, you say it to my face. So I put up with a lifetime of people trying to cut me down. Right? And if you tried, I swear to God, you better run. If I ever catch up, I swear, I might teach you some manners.
Part of what our job is with the X-Men franchise is to figure out which new characters we would introduce. We have all been huge fans of Blob. When I was developing the first X-Men, we had a script that included the Blob. The problem with the Blob is that there is an expense that goes with him. So we never really had the budget to do it. This time we had less mutants with demanding physical powers so that we could involve the Blob.
It was tricky because we had to get somebody who would be able to be the most powerful, muscular individual at the beginning of the movie, and then later on when we meet him in the movies, a guy who's eaten himself into the most enormous man.
We needed somebody very tall, and Kevin Durand came in. Totally game to put on a fat suit, which, by the way, weighs a lot.
When I first got offered the Blob, I thought that someone was playing a prank on me. I did not think that I was going to play Fred. And when I really thought about it, I got so excited to get to disappear into this huge, almost bipolar type, all over the place. He could flip on a dime. He could be telling you something really charming and funny and then punch you in the frickin' face.
Fred?
The tank.
The tank.
When he's what we call War Blob, the pre-boxing fat blob, the guns here are just ginormal, and his chest and his back and his neck are all added on so that he's just an enormous human being when he walks in the room. But the makeup is very good. When we were shooting in Sydney, a lot of the extras came up and go, wow, what did you do to work out to be like that?
I wanted a guy who looked like he was this big, tough guy.
Had enough? It's embarrassing.
But in some way is a little bit of a softie because, he has a great line in the plane.
Oh, Jesus, Fred, you just met her last night.
I love her.
You love her after one night.
She's a gymnast.
He just taps the humor of that whilst remaining absolutely true to the sort of seriousness of that character. That endears him to us, so that when we find him later on in the movie, in this giant suit, there's a sort of lostness to this guy, and even in his aggression, we understand that he's a guy who's basically comfort eating to an extreme degree.
Hey, Fat, Fred, seem to remember that girl when she was about 85 pounds, huh?
Oh, that's funny. You're still so funny, Logan.
One of the signature things that Wolverine does is call his adversaries Bub. And we needed to get the name Blob out.
Come on, Bub, for old time's sake, huh?
Did you just call me Blob?
No, but...
So we're playing with the mythology of having the name Bub, and yet trying to use it in a way that's just tipping the hat to, yes, we know he calls people Bub, but here's how Blob got his name.
Told you not to mention his weight. Why'd you call him Blob?
I didn't call him Blob, I said Bub.
The original sequence we had with Blob was in a supermarket. But we prevised it and planned it out, and it just became too big. And so that's when we were thinking about how can we do it another way. Doing it in the boxing ring and now seeing him and putting them one-on-one seemed like a lot of fun.
It's got to be the biggest fat suit that's ever been created. We used about a half a ton of clay and sculpted a very huge body. And then they'd even plug in the cool suit.
I have never been so hot. They had this tubing that went through my t-shirt underneath that was hooked up to an ice box. So between takes, they would hurry up and hook me up to the ice box, or else I would literally melt.
This fat suit that he wears, I don't know how he moved around in that thing.
I think at the end of the day, when I stepped on the scale as Blob, it was about 90 pounds heavier than what I was before I put everything on. Right, so like I'm eating a lot of food here, trying to get myself ready for Blob. So we're gonna start the process and you know, come along for the ride and watch me turn into the Blob.
We sculpted over Kevin Durand. We created appliances to really fill out Kevin's face.
Am I doing my showers today?
And that was maybe about 5 pieces of rubber that fit on him, custom made to him.
Do I look like Blob yet?
Getting there. And then a wig on top of that.
It's going to look beautiful again.
Very beautiful.
You know how long it would have taken me to get to 1,000 pounds?
Years and years.
Yeah. So they would have had to hire me in 2003, 2002. Just eat the whole time.
And then you get cut out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about a 5-hour total process to get him in the makeup and the bodysuit.
Blob is ready.
Kevin could move around in it. He could sort of find his own sort of place in this thing and jump around. And he sort of stretches at the beginning of the fight. It's really funny, and that was sort of his little gag that he did. What we wanted to do was get a lot more fat jiggles when he hits Blob, and so he wanted to get some sort of sloshing around of his fat. So we actually scanned this actor. We have a head-to-toe scan of Kevin in his costume. What we did is we kept his arms, we kept his head, and a little of his trousers, but you can see down here, actually it's below frame, you see a little bit of the fat wiggling and jiggling.
Hey, guess what?
The Blob is going to be a massive favorite of the kids, I'm telling you. He's hilarious.
Don't be the Blob, kids. Be the war Blob, don't be the Blob. Don't be Fred. Don't turn into a set. Just go do your exercise. Step away from the computer and the chili cheese fries. Get yourself some exercise, or else you'll experience your demise.
Bradley, take her down.
Dominic Monaghan plays the character of Bradley Bolt. It's a lovely little character and it's a great little piece, and I'm so thrilled that someone like Dominic did it.
He is a mutant who has the ability to control electricity.
He can turn on lights and manipulate radio waves and do all these sort of funny things. He's sort of this small sort of pixie-like character. It kind of looks a little out of place amongst all these sort of big mutants.
Clear out of the way, we have to get 6 very large men out here.
Wow, 5.
Hey, 5.5.
Put me on the step.
And yet his power is quite significant.
Bradley, top floor, please.
He's probably the least soldier-like out of all of the guys. He's, I think, the youngest guy in Logan's platoon, and I think you could argue that he's probably the most good out of all of the characters. Sir, base wants to know our location.
Shut him down.
Dominic is just such a terrific actor. He does it so easily that I think You accept him and you don't realize all the work that he puts into it.
I was a fan of the film, and obviously I've read the comic books before. So I just thought, well, it's almost as if you're strapping yourself into a roller coaster ride, you know. It's huge set pieces, it's big actors, it's broad brushstrokes in a way.
Dominic is terrific. Again, a wicked sense of humor. I love his unique sort of deep voice. It's not a huge role, but he brings, you know, a lot of fun and a lot of character to that role.
We see him in the setup of all the characters, and then when we meet him later, he's also tried to walk away from it and tried to just lead a simple life in the carnival.
And what does he become? A lonely guy at a carnival who kind of uses his powers to do little magic tricks and earn a few bucks. He goes back into his trailer and kind of is reverted to a childlike state, where he's got little toys and he wears bright-colored shirts and he's almost 12 years old again and he turns on his trains.
He has these tiny little clockwork toys that he's able to make move, and they are his friends, you know. I mean, he's quite a lonely guy in a way.
I found directing this film, those are the moments that were most fun for me. They're just poignant and profoundly human.
One of the saddest things I think about that scene is you can see what he has sacrificed to get away from the platoon, to be anonymous, you know, and he would be there to the end of his days if it wasn't for the fact that Liev's character turns up.
Show's never over for us, Bradley.
And my favorite thing about the entire scene is that once he understands that that's the only way that this scenario is going to end, he finds his balls, you know. He finds the ability to say to Liev's character, well, I don't care. He finds peace.
I'm not afraid of you, Victor. I'm afraid to die.
My name is Remy LeBeau. To my enemies, it's Gambit. You can go on ahead and forget the first name for now. Every man has a price to charge and a price to pay. I've paid mine in spades. If I've learned anything about life, it's this. Always play the cards you're dealt. My name is Gambit, and I play for keeps.
Fans have been after seeing Gambit in these movies. I remember the first movie, fans and kids would come to me and say, is Gambit in the movie? Is he going to have Gambit? Is he going to throw the cards? It's like, all right, hang on. You only do so many at each movie. Hang on, hang on.
Gambit is a character the fans have been dying to see. And he probably is one of the most famous and popular of the comic book series. So I'm so thrilled we hadn't used him.
We didn't want to put him in the first three. We wanted to make sure that every mutant that we brought in was different from the ones that we already had there.
Are you Remy LeBeau?
Do I owe you money?
No.
Then Remy LeBeau I am.
He has this amazing ability to impart certain kinetic energy into any object that he touches. And again, of course, me being the sort of drama-driven director that I am, I'm kind of thinking, well, of course, that is another way for one's inner rage in a fantasy way to come out.
Taylor Kitsch does a terrific job. He brings kind of a suave New Orleans, kind of the cat that swallowed the canary look. Just a bit of attitude to play back against Logan, which is kind of fun.
Gambit's a loner. He's been through some stuff when he was younger. An orphan and a thief, petty thief. So he's kind of just been on his own since the get-go, and you can kind of tell with his, just the way he intrinsically deals with everything. I don't think he's ever in a hurry because he has that energy. I'm playing him at a younger age too, so he's got that, not cockiness, but he can be quite abrasive. He knows that he has that energy, and at will he can toss you through maybe a wall if he wants. So much fun to play. He's got that persona with him that he really doesn't show until he needs to. That's cool.
We had to teach him how to throw cards, which he was terrific and game about using.
Playing with cards, I gotta tell you, I shot the card stuff first, and now I can do quite a bit with the cards. Sitting in that hotel room for a good 4 to 6 hours a day, it's good times. Kind of go crazy, not gonna lie. Literally like packs and packs of cards dispersed throughout my room. That was on for weeks and weeks, but it's definitely worth it, you know. That gives you the confidence to have them in your hand and just play with them unconsciously, rather than like, oh, how's the card look?
heavily prevised all of Gambit's card tricks as far as what he was going to do with the cards, how they were going to hang in the air. Just the look of the energy. We went through a lot of versions of it.
This was a real problem. This took us a long time to figure out how to do it. How do you show that? I mean, we had all kinds of purple lines running all over the cards, jumping from one charge to the other. We finally went for less is more. We finally went for that purple energy just surrounding the suit on the card, Ace of Diamonds.
Gambit had a lot of bow staff work, and we did a lot of research into Japanese-style bow staff, Chinese-style bow staff, Korean-style bow staff, and we settled on a kind of Chinese wushu-esque meets karate do bow staff version for Gambit.
That's a nice stick.
He really worked very hard, worked with the stuntmen. He took the time to prepare and to physically undertake that character.
The training started right when I got here, the bow staff and all that, and I'm that kind of actor where you want as much of the stunt stuff to be you. And so, you know, you gotta kind of deserve it, earn it, you know, in a sense, and they're not gonna shoot it if you're like throwing sticks and the bow staff's flying out of your hand while you do it. So it's up to you if you want the double doing all your stuff, or you want to come in and work your own and get that many cooler shots out of it. The physicality part of it helps a lot. You get his strat, you get his mindset. It's funny because they send these videos or whatnot of what's gonna happen in these fights. The video comes in and it's like, okay, we gotta do this, we gotta train for this, you're gonna be on wires and all that kind of stuff. So we start training for that, then a new video will come in and it's like, okay, this is out, but this is in, so let's kind of, you know, shift our training other way. So you're adapting, but at the same time, your tools are just, you know, more and more.
We have a reveal with Gambit running across the rooftops and flying with the staff.
I have to say that Taylor was phenomenal on his wire work and really trained really hard to be able to do that, because we wanted to be able to film him front on, so we had his face coming at us. You could do face replacement if it was impossible for the actor to do that stunt, but that twirling moment on the wires is Taylor Kitsch doing a great job.
We decided that instead of shooting this in Louisiana and New Orleans, it would probably be a better idea to do this on a green screen stage, and then drop in New Orleans behind it. The first step is obviously shoot it, and then we go in and we start blocking it out with rough 3D geometry. This is the rough 3D layout of our New Orleans scene. Now, the great thing about doing anything like this virtually is that you can move things around and shift it about. One of the big remits that we had was that we need to see the church in there, we need to see the church in there. A lot of these things were built from actual still photos that we had of Louisiana. So after this, we get sign off from everyone, and then we actually go into lighting and rendering. And this is the final results. It was done by a company in Toronto called Seho VFX. Little touches that we've added in there, for example, the colored lights on the casino boat on the Mississippi, tiny little star filters on the lights everywhere, the bridge in the background, everything falling into place really nicely.
We built a huge set in Sydney, one of these enormous sound stages of the alleyway that breaks up the fight between Logan and his half-brother Creed, with his bringing his staff down onto the cobblestone street and sort of ripples the entire street, blows the windows out and so forth. That sort of shows his power.
That sequence for me was one of the most demanding because we had a lot of elements there. We had a lot of elements of wire work. We had a lot of elements of explosions. We had a lot of elements of camera work, i.e. cable cam, steady cam, dolly, techno crane. It was covered from anywhere you could think of covering it. It looked like a puppet show.
Then the entire scene, and especially those big wide shots, are further enhanced in the computer by adding more debris, although there was a fair amount of it, more debris, and of course the big shockwave that lifts all the tiles in the alley.
What we did first was we shot all the actors on wires. So you can see he does his thing and they get pulled away, and you can see we have mats and so forth for the guys to land on. The explosion, it was time to sort of ripple down the street. You can see everything sort of going down the street. But of course, there's nobody there. So what we did is we took our actors and composited them into the debris. But they also wanted the cobblestones of the street to deflect and buckle and warp with the energy of Gambit's staff. And Gambit is imparting energy through his staff. So when he hits it on the ground, the energy travels down through the staff and then damages the whole street. So this is the finished shot. And you see, this is the, so you can see all the little animation, the glowing cobblestones. And all this color that you see in between the stones is animation. We put in the color, his sort of energy sort of radiating out. And you can see the two, you can see Creed and Logan getting sort of thrown back in all the debris, and somehow, magically, Gambit is unaffected by it. And again, the first time we did some of the animation effects, we started big, and everyone, oh, this is way over the top, his color's too much, he had lightning going everywhere, and what we did is just dial down the effect until it felt right.
You're doing it, and obviously none of the special effects are in it, so you're just like, okay, how was that? The staff was purple there, did you see it? No. You know, those kind of things. Even throwing the cards and stuff, you know, you just gotta, it's your gig, you gotta buy into it and then some.
You miss me. My mission is not to feel. My objective is not to think. I execute orders, and I eliminate targets without prejudice, one way or another. And now I kill my own kind, but not because I'm a traitor. That's because they're the only adversaries worthy of my skill. My name is Agent Zero, and I know which side I'm on. Do you?
And you've kind of been glancing, and then she sees that you've got absorbed.
Agent Zero, played by Daniel Henney, has this extraordinary ability with weapons, and he's basically an incredible sniper and sharpshooter.
He's the best shot in the universe. We have a scene where he shoots into the window of a farmhouse, and you see he's several hills away. That's how good and fast he is. It's interesting because up until now, our X-Men do not use weapons. You don't see Wolverine walking around with a gun. So this gave us a chance to go in that direction with Agent Zero.
He's a weapons specialist. He's an assassin slash sniper slash bodyguard and protector of Danny Houston's character, William Stryker.
I think Daniel does a fantastic job of finding the sort of smugness of a guy who thinks he's just better than everybody else.
Still shooting first, asking questions later?
You still chewing on cheap cigars? I've done interviews and they've asked me, so are you a bad guy? And I'm like, well, what is bad guy? And I say, it's hard to define what a bad guy is, especially in this circumstance, because they're all part of the same team initially. So if Zero's bad, then what is Logan? You know, and what is Creed? Zero is simply a soldier at heart, and he carries out his missions. And he actually has said his mission is not to think, it's not to feel, it's to execute his orders and eliminate targets that are given to him. And that's it. And that's how he operates. He's very robotic. The funny thing about that is that small places where you do see emotion with Zero is the relationship between him and Logan. There's a history there. And he's bitter.
Hunt him down. Take his head off.
Daniel's one of those really, really warm people, and I remember thinking, I just instantly like this guy, and he's got to play a really despicable character, and he pulls it off. And he's funny, he's very funny. He's had a lot of experience in films, and I think this was something different for him, and he really relished it. Daniel is the Brad Pitt of Korea. I mean, he cannot walk down the street there without being absolutely mobbed. In New Zealand, he's walking down the street, and he just had complete anonymity until the tourist bus turned up from Korea. And it was the most amazing sight. All of a sudden, from walking down the street, having a good old time, 5 minutes later, the tour bus had left. He'd signed 100 autographs, and he had about 30 teddy bears in his arm that had been gifts. He can never escape, and I think after this movie, he's going to get more fans in a lot of other places.
For me, this film was nothing short of a fairy tale. I live and work in Asia, and this was my first big American project, and it was like I just walked through one door after another, and here I was working with Hugh Jackman, and I was in New Zealand for 4 days. I was the first actor there, I think. And I was informed that I'm going to be shooting this major action scene with Hugh the next day. I hadn't even met the guy yet, and I was kind of freaking out, you know? But he's an amazing guy, everyone knows that. Don't worry, Nancy, more people die driving than flying.
How about from impaling?
The X-Men fans are passionate, intelligent people, and it puts a huge responsibility on us as actors to work to the best of our abilities in this film, you know, and to also to research these characters and to make sure that we do them justice.
Attaboy.
All I ever wanted was to travel the world, exotic places, meet new and exciting people, and then kill them. So I became a mercenary. I love what I do. I'm Wade Wilson. They call me the Merc with the Mouth.
The character of Wade Wilson, played by Ryan Reynolds, is also, of course, the much beloved X-Men character. And he, of course, has these fantastic katana swords that he wields with sort of superhuman ability.
The story is sort of tragic, as all the X-Men characters are. He decided to get involved in Weapon X because it might help his cancer.
In our movie, we started with him before that cancer has taken hold of him, when he's still a young mercenary known as the Merc with a Mouth, who can never shut up. He's always full of wise cracks and smart lines.
Manicure.
I know fans have waited for him to be in this role, and he doesn't disappoint me.
I wouldn't say that I'm a comic book aficionado, but definitely this character I've always really responded to. I really like the art in the Deadpool comics, and I've loved some of the different storylines that they've covered. And, you know, I just always felt a kind of a kinship to him. I mean, he's this guy, he's a Merc with a Mouth. I've always been kind of a fan of effervescent witticisms, I suppose, also known as sarcasm. Great. Stuck in an elevator with 5 guys on a high-protein diet.
Oh, Wade.
Dreams really do come true.
So just shut it.
And Ryan, who is a really funny man in real life, and came up with all those lines himself.
The poor guy, I laughed through so many of his takes. It got to a point where I said, mate, I think I should just leave the set because he ad-libs quite a lot and he is hilarious.
You're up next.
Thank you, sir. You look really nice today. It's the green. It brings out the seriousness in your eyes.
Oh my God, you ever shut up, pal?
No. Not when I'm awake. And I was mentioned in a Deadpool comic once, which I thought was really cool. They asked him if what he looks like under the mask, and he said he looks like a cross between a Sharpay and Ryan Reynolds. And I just thought, I'd like to play that guy someday. So here I am. Time to go to work. Wade, at the beginning of the film, has a really large action set piece with his katana swords. Of all the weapons in the whole wide world, this is it.
We call it flowering the sword. Flowering is like a big figure 8 going around the body.
Okay, here we go, ready.
I just spent months playing with the swords, and you know, I would have conversations around the house while I'm just spinning them everywhere, and you know, it wasn't without its accidents a few times. You know, I speak from experience when I say that circumcision should never be an accident.
Okay, let's everyone get in position then, guys.
The guy's work ethic is second to none. When he had their routine, he was going over and over and over and over and over and over it. And then we filmed it. It was about 2 in the morning when he filmed this massive shot. It was incredible. He went to his trailer. It was about 4 in the morning. He came back and says, I can do it better. Fuck! And I mean, how can you say no to a guy who's, that's Ryan.
Yeah, action!
Now, if you look at the raw performance alone, we're getting a lot to begin with. And what we did was we made the blur more like an airplane propeller. The next thing that we did is to actually put in the bullet hits. The final bit is the bullets flying towards camera.
Okay. People are dead. If you didn't have that mouth on you, Wade, you'd be the perfect soldier.
And then ultimately there's a sort of tragedy that happens to this character. He represents what almost happened to Wolverine. He is taken into this Weapon X program. He is manipulated by Stryker both physically and psychologically.
I needed your powers for the pool.
The what?
The mutant killer. Deadpool.
He's Stryker's perfect soldier. Yeah, he's got all the healing abilities that Wolverine has, all the strengths that Wolverine has, and then some. So he's become the one thing that can truly destroy Wolverine.
Yeah, Stryker finally figured out how to shut you up.
Gavin Hood's idea was that this is about origins. So Deadpool is not going to ever come to his complete fruition as Deadpool as the fans know him in the comic books.
Deadpool has a very cool uniform, and it's red. His head is red, and he's got black diamonds here. Since we bring him out in the middle of his being operated on, we couldn't put him in a uniform. He's just wearing his operating pajamas and nothing on top. And he's got a bit of red here. But later on in the fight, the black starts to come out. So we're saying, we know he's supposed to have those diamonds, and he is that character, and here it is.
I was pulled aside by Lord and Shula Donner and Gavin Hood, and they said, this is the anchor of the biggest blockbuster of the summer. Pull out all the stops. So I went out and called Scott Adkins to come in and play the double for Deadpool. He does what people do with wires, without.
We shot the actors on a green screen stage on a set piece, which was about 15 feet tall and 3 or 4 feet wide. It was still a little dicey to be up there, but everything was created digitally behind them.
We had Hugh and Liev back to back. And then Scott would be on one side of them, and I would call out, go! And Scott would actually do it with Creed, but Logan would mimic the other side. Then we'd get the whole sequence, then we'd go back and do the other side.
The action sequences are handled with the utmost care. You know, he's a borderline insane mercenary. And at the same time, I mean, he can cut you to shreds with his wit. And that's something that you know, I think you're going to see in the film.
We were looking for this mutant that would come through as more powerful than Wolverine. Yes, we deliberately took Deadpool and gave him certain things and attributes in the past that has never been seen in the comics. Good. We hope we surprised you a little.
I remember the day they came and took me away. Not even my parents could look me in the eye when I learned that fear can be stronger than love. The soldiers, mutants, hunting their own kind, caging us, experimenting on us like animals. No one will stand up for us. They don't even know we're here. We have to save ourselves. I'm a mutant. I know what it means to live your life in the dark. But no more. My name is Emma Frost, and my fight has just begun.
There's a wonderful cameo appearance of a character called Diamond Girl, played by Tahina Tosi, who's a young Australian actress who does a fabulous American accent, who brought both a glorious sexiness and a wonderful innocence and beauty to the role.
And she goes, go, and she comes running here, takes the hits, and jumps in behind.
He needed someone blonde and beautiful, which she is. She's also a ballet dancer, so she had a nice way of moving, and that really does help with some of our physical work.
Well, this is one of the pivotal scenes where I first see Kayla, and being locked up, you know, I haven't seen her for years, so that's a big moment. And then when we are attacked, my mutant powers come out and I'm able to protect the rest of the mutants and Kayla. Go, now! You know, I get shot, and I did like a squib test the other day with all the bullets and things flying off me, so I kind of felt really cool. I am made of diamonds, so I can basically break through anything, things reflect off me.
That was the interesting process, visual effects-wise, because we had a wonderful actress, and then through CGI, put diamonds on her. And it took forever, because it looked like she was wearing a suit with diamonds sewn on it, you know. It didn't look like it came from within.
What does a girl covered in diamonds look like? Nobody's ever seen it before, so we scanned her from head to toe, and then one of the guys will move her to match her real body. That's how we get the three-dimensional look. What you can see here are a lot of different versions of Diamond Girl. Although it looks very similar, they're actually pretty different.
We tried big diamonds and then little diamonds, and then we finally found a combination of big and little diamonds with a bit of skin coming through.
These are some what we call turntables. This again looks very chromy, but actually it will be rendered out differently eventually. But sometimes we'd see something where we go, well, this arm works pretty good, and we liked, let's say we keep this arm, or that we like the reflections, or we look at our cheeks. So we found a balance finally. It took a while, but we found that balance.
Shoot on sight!
I guess I'm sort of as hard as steel, but they didn't want to go with the metal girl, so they went with the diamond girl. So, and I'm very happy with that.
Weapon X is in the barn.
Blow him to bits. Let's see if he can survive that.
The helicopter chase, which is kind of unbelievable.
After he's gotten his adamantium, he escapes, but Stryker tracks him down, and there becomes a chase.
Second unit were there for 8, 9, 10 weeks, shooting this massive sequence.
That is a perfect example of combining as much physical effects as possible with your visual effects.
And action!
Where you can get a shot in camera by actually doing the gag, flying the helicopter in, it's often better than when you have to do it after the fact in a sort of 3D environment. For example, blowing up a barn, we actually did that.
In some of the early meetings, everyone's saying, oh, are you going to do that as a miniature? And is that a digital effect? And I said, well, why don't we just build a barn full size and blow it up?
So the helicopter is live, it flies in, you see the barn, but the actual rocket that travels from the helicopter to that point of impact is done later on as a CG rocket, because we were not about to start firing rockets.
One of the biggest explosions that I've ever seen in my life, and being in the business for 20 years, I've seen a whole bunch of them, was when they blew that barn.
We're always trying to be original. What can we do that we've never seen before? I mean, the dailies were coming back, and it was just extraordinary.
So we shot Hugh separately in a green screen, sort of coming out on a wheelie of a stunt rider that was shot after the explosion and composited it in, because you wouldn't want to be there when this thing blew up. Our second director, Peter McDonald, we worked out with our previs guys sort of this whole chase sequence.
I tried to set this really great chase against this incredible New Zealand scenery, which was in the Queenstown area, which is so beautiful, and we just went for it.
You have a helicopter shooting and a man on a motorcycle. Let's get him in a canopy of trees where the helicopter can't go.
3, 2, 1, action!
We took a KTM, which is a dirt bike, and mocked it up to make it look like a Harley Davidson. It's a very difficult scene because you have a lot of elements going. You have a helicopter element, you have 3 Humvees chasing, you have a guy in mocked up Harley, you have explosions.
We have the helicopter coming up over the hill. Suddenly, he has to turn around and comes back at the Hummer, and Wolverine just slices the tires.
That entire vehicle is created in CGI. In the shot that immediately follows is a live-action stunt of a real Humvee flipping.
We're going to come down the road about 80 kilometres per hour, and I have a cannon which has a slug which will projectile out at about 750 psi, and which will lift up the car and cartwheel down the road.
For the crash, for instance, that was actually a shell of a helicopter. It was slid down a giant cable.
The helicopter here is secured to this arbor up here. It gets hauled up to the top of that crane way over there. We release it explosively and it gets towed down the line by a silver car over there. We cut it off the cables and it falls and smashes and tumbles along the road.
We'll be rolling the cameras. I'll hear 3 things. I'll hear rolling 1, rolling 2, and rolling 3. Once I hear that, we then go to action. And action!
that tail blows, you've come flying here and you've hit the dust at a low angle here. Boom!
So he's shot as a separate plate, where he then comped into that plate, jumping off the helicopter. And then we pick it up later with Hugh on the ground, getting up, and we've got the helicopter crashed and flames coming out of it that are more controlled.
And so this shot ultimately, I just think he keeps walking to camera, grows from a cowboy to a mid shot. But if you see, I have you foreground, big on screen, and a whole chopper background.
And he just keeps coming.
Love it.
Setting the explosives. Everything banks moves back.
It is his first use of the adamantium in that sequence, and he figures out what he can do with these adamantium blades that he could not do with the bone.
Hi, I'm Len Wein, co-creator of Wolverine, and I'm sitting here with the living legend himself, Stan the Man Lee. We're here to talk about the origins of the X-Men and Wolverine and all of that sort of good stuff.
Wow, well that was a great introduction, and now I'm waiting for you to say the first thing that'll give me my cue to wax eloquent.
Well, fair enough. None of us would be here at all if you and Jack Kirby had not created the X-Men and did handle those first bunch of issues. Tell us how that came about.
I had been doing so many superheroes and getting superpowers, you know, a guy who was the strongest character on Earth, and somebody who could fly, and somebody who could stretch his body, and so forth. The toughest thing is coming up, as you know, with new superpowers. So one day I decided to take the cowardly way out. I figured instead of having to explain their origins and how they got their powers, I'd make up a lot of crazy powers and say they were born that way. They were mutants. No explanation needed, no being struck by lightning or bitten by a radioactive weasel or anything, just they got a power. And lo, the X-Men were born. And that's it. And I have never been more dull in my life.
Well, did you work closely with Jack? You had on so many other projects.
Couldn't have done it without Jack. Jack was the most imaginative person I have ever known. He was not only an artist, but he was a storyteller. And he told the stories visually through his drawings. And for example, when we first created the X-Men, and I said, I want them to be at a school, we'll have a professor. The name of the professor will be Professor Xavier, because I'm so corny. I said, that'll tie in with the X of X-Men. And Professor Xavier teaches them how to handle their superpowers and everything. And Jack brought in the first few pages, and they're all fighting each other, which is a wonderful way to start a story. But I said, what are they fighting about? And he said, no, they're exercising. I decided they should have a room where they exercise. I thought that was great, so we decided to call it the Danger Room. But I never would have done that unless Jack had given me those drawings, you know? So he was the greatest collaborator you could ever have.
Now, as I recall, you had a shorter run on X-Men probably than any of the other books that you and Jack did together. You did Thor for years, you did the FF for 100 issues. Why did you leave the X-Men book?
I can't remember completely, but I think what happened was we never thought the X-Men book was quite as important as the others. Jack only had time to do so many. He was doing the FF and Thor and I think the Hulk or whatever. So I finally got another artist to do the X-Men. And somehow I wasn't as happy working with the other artist, but the book was still selling well enough to keep it going. So I stopped writing it, got another writer, and the book kept going, and I turned my attention to other things, and that's really what happened. And it didn't sell quite as well until a new group took it over, and I wouldn't be surprised if you were part of that new group.
Oh, segues. I love segues.
That's some segue, huh?
Did you expect the X-Men would still be going today, even as a completely evolved and different creature than what you guys created?
I never would have thought that any of them would still be around today or as big and important as they are today. That's really the most amazing thing of all, and the most gratifying thing, of course, and only because the people who took over the writing and the drawing later did such a great job that they not only kept the strips going, but they improved on them as they went along by making up characters like, oh, shall we say, Wolverine?
Wolverine actually was not created initially to be one of the X-Men. That's the
Really?
weird part.
I didn't know that.
No, I created Wolverine for the Hulk. For give him somebody to fight, because God knows you have 12
How
issues
could
a
the
year.
Hulk fight Wolverine? He could step on him and crush him.
Except he's indestructible.
Oh,
Wolverine.
that's right. That's right.
That's how you play it.
Wow.
But no, I mean, he became part of the X-Men because there was all that scuttlebutt going around about reviving the X-Men as the international superhero group. So I figured, oh, a Canadian, let's make him a mutant. One of the things that's always sort of bothered me about the X-Men, and I don't think you intended it, but it became the situation, is that your whole idea of, well, if I just make a mutant so I don't have to come up with origins, everyone started to do that. It was simply, I'm a mutant. Okay, that's one panel, we're done, now let's do a story.
Well, speaking of origins, he says, because he realizes that Len has been talking longer than him and he will never tolerate that. So speaking of origins, I think that the origin that you gave Wolverine is one of the most brilliant origins ever, and one of the most provocative and mystifying, and it kept the readers on the edge of their seats for I don't know how many years, wondering how did it happen? What happened up in Canada? And I mean, it was just wonderful the way Wolverine almost single-handedly kept people fascinated by that book.
I think part of that is the mystery factor. I think the less you know about a character, the more interesting they are. You know, mysterious women in black are always much more intriguing than the girl next door who you know everything about.
Well, now that depends on the woman, but we can get into that later.
This is a G-rated conversation.
I feel the same
probably.
way about you, you know. I know so little about you that I find you intriguing, and I'm sure as soon as I get to know you better, I mean, will this thing ever end? You know.
Listen, I have spent decades hiding my mutant powers from you. It's not easy to do. I'm all strapped up here to keep the wings hidden. It's not an easy thing. I guess part of the fascination is how these characters have evolved over the years. The fact that Wolverine and the X-Men have taken yours and Jack's creation in a whole other direction. How do you feel about seeing that sort of thing with the X-Men?
Well, the way I feel about it, not only with the X-Men, but with all our characters, when characters have been in existence for so many, not years, for so many decades, the writers naturally feel, I've got to inject a new angle, a new element. I've got to do something to keep the reader's interest up. So they make changes. They kill a character off. They make a character ill. They have one marry another, divorce another, become a drunkard, whatever it is, because they're desperately trying to just throw in a new angle that'll grab the readers, and you know that better than anybody. So I never object to the changes that are made. First of all, I'm not in a position to object. But secondly, because I understand why they make them. And I'd probably, and you'd probably do the same thing. If you were writing the same group of characters year after year, you'd have to say to yourself, I gotta put some surprises in here and some new twists. Now I think I've spoken as long as your longest speech, so I feel better, and now I'll stop and take a break.
You're timing this, aren't you? It's sad. I think there is that element. There's always a natural evolution. I get the question, I'm sure you've gotten it, how you feel about do you feel proprietary towards the characters?
No, I really don't. I really don't. I felt proprietary, as I'm sure you did, toward the characters when I was writing them.
Oh, absolutely.
But the minute you stop writing them, somebody else is writing them. And if that somebody doesn't have the freedom to write it the way he or she wants to, then it isn't fair, it isn't right. No, I don't really have a proprietary feeling about him.
I think we share that. I'm sort of the same way. People ask me that, and I go, I have taken over other people's characters and done things, well, many of them yours, in fact.
Yeah, and I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Probably not on camera, this is not. But, but you have to allow the fact that these things are, I think you once put it, modern mythos. Mm-hmm. It's the legends and the campfire stories of today, and they evolve and grow. They have to. They have to become something new constantly. And since I've had my hands on other people's pies, I don't think it's fair of me to feel no one else has the right to do that with my characters.
And I think that's a very honest attitude.
You talked earlier about somebody doing a book for years and years and years. I've never done that. I think my longest run on a book was 5 years on the Hulk. It was probably the longest I ever stuck with anything. You have the Fantastic Four, you went on for years. Chris Claremont, when he took over the X-Men for me, I think did it for like 17 years.
17 years?
Yeah, I think he told 3 different stories at least in the course of it.
Oh my gosh.
But I found it amazing. Chris was one of my editorial assistants when I was editor-in-chief during the year and a half I had the turn at bat. And I was writing several books a month, and I discovered I really couldn't do that and be editor-in-chief. You discover that yourself. You have to start letting go of things. And Chris had a little desk outside of the editor-in-chief's office where he would do proofreading, whatever. And I started having a conversation one day about having to give up a book. I was doing the Hulk as well, and I think Spidey, and I was doing the X-Men. I said, something's got to go. I can't do this many books and still run the company, sort of. And suddenly from outside, this little voice piped up, me, I'll take over the X-Men. I'll do it like a windmill, the arm waving like crazy to get my attention. I'll take it. And I saw such enthusiasm and such, anybody that passionate, they get a shot. So I gave the book to Chris, and he stayed for 17 years. We couldn't get him off of it. Crowbars, nothing. We couldn't get rid of him.
I didn't realize it was that long. Wow. And he did a great job.
He did.
The X-Men, everybody who did the X-Men did a great job. Maybe they're easy to write. Maybe I shouldn't be so impressed. I don't know. They may be a very easy group to write.
Well, if that's true,
I'm only kidding.
Longer. I'm aware. Somebody was positing a few months ago in preparation for the film was 10 things you didn't know about Wolverine. And one of those 10 things was that I had originally intended for Wolverine to be a mutated Wolverine. Not a human being with Wolverine-like powers, but a Wolverine who was evolved by the High Evolutionary. You remember him?
If somebody said that in a blog, it has to be true.
Really? Wow.
I don't even read blogs, because what people say, and if you let it upset you, or if you try to correct the record, you spend your life just doing that.
As a rule of thumb, I agree with you. I don't do that. But I don't want to be tagged with that particular label. No, he was always human. I always envisioned Wolverine as a human being, or a mutant human being with the various powers.
I always assumed
that. I know.
But let me ask you.
Yes.
I just thought of this. Is he literally a mutant, or is he a human being that something scientific had been done to him to make him the way he was? Has he been altered biologically, or whatever the word would be, in which case maybe he's not a true mutant because he wasn't born that way? But only you would know. I have come to the source.
The answer actually is yes. To both. He was born a mutant. His original mutant abilities were heightened senses and the healing factor.
Oh, he had that when he was born?
The healing factor comes with the territory.
Oh, so the adamantium was added.
The adamantium is what made him who he is today, the indestructible quality.
Oh, I'm glad
he could heal before, but he wasn't indestructive.
I'm glad you clarified that.
I think that's actually in the movie. It was certainly touched on in the second or third of the X-Men films, the whole Weapon X project, where they took... He was the only person on Earth, I think, really, you could do it to, because of the healing factor. Anyone else would have been killed if you tried it on them.
It certainly would have been unpleasant.
Oh, at the very least, would have ruined their lunch hour. Wolverine could survive the process, and so he did.
Wow, that's great. I'm so glad you told me, because I wondered for a long time, is he a true mutant? But of course.
He is a true mutant.
If he was born with the healing factor,
Yes, and
which
the
made him a
hypersenses.
mutant. Now, something else that has impressed me greatly. Is there such a thing, because it sounds very authentic, or did you make up the word adamantium?
Roy Thomas. It was made up. There is, sadly, no indestructible metal. Everything can be gotten to somehow, but it works great in the comics. All right, you've seen the first 3 X-Men movies. So
I wouldn't have missed them.
Well, you're in them, as I recall. Now, you've seen Hugh Jackman, and what's your take? How do you feel about Hugh as Wolverine?
I cannot now envision anybody else playing the role. He is so great as Wolverine that, I mean, there are no words.
I agree completely. As I said to someone earlier, who would have thought a guy who plays Curly in Oklahoma on Broadway could play that character?
A song and dance guy.
Went on to play Peter Allen as his next role after that.
Right.
But he's breathtakingly perfect. There's a wonderful picture. I'm about to embarrass my wife. I always talk about of Hugh and myself and my wife at Comic-Con a few years back, and 3 of us together. And I'm smiling at the camera, and Hugh, God love him, is smiling at me, and my wife is looking up at Hugh like he's lunch. It's just like. He is actually the most gorgeous man I have ever met.
I was very careful not to have my wife meet him.
You couldn't warn me first?
I don't have the self-confidence that you do.
No, I just went in blindly and ignorantly as usual.
I was always trying to get female readers interested in our books, you know.
Good.
And the X-Men had a lot of, for some reason, the X-Men had great appeal for females as well as guys.
I think there's a romance factor to the X-Men books that isn't
there's
true about a lot of the others.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the great cosmic soap operas.
Cyclops, of course, I thought it was so perfect to have him in love with one of the girls, but he could never really look her in the eye, so to speak, because he couldn't remove his glasses, and I felt that was a very dramatic thing that would appeal to our female readers. And the fact that there are so many characters, it's almost like some of these TV series like Lost or Heroes, or, you know, you get a lot of interesting characters and you throw them together and see what comes up.
Exactly. When it works wonderfully.
Yeah, and thank goodness it's been working.
Hi, I'm Tava Smiley for Fox Movie Channel, here in Tempe, Arizona, the winning city in a nationwide contest to host the world premiere of the 20th Century Fox release, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Hi, it's Hugh Jackman here in New York City.
Via web broadcast, Hugh Jackman invited fans to visit xmenorigins.com and vote for their city. Thousands of towns across the United States participated, but only one town gets to roll out the red carpet.
Now it's time to announce our winner, and X marks the spot for Tempe, Arizona. Yes.
Tempe won the contest because they are the biggest fans of Wolverine, and we asked the fans how it feels to roll out the red carpet for the cast and crew.
Oh my God, I've been waiting for this moment forever, so I'm so excited. It's unbelievable.
Hello, red carpet. Hugh Jackman's gonna be here. How awesome is that? We're in Tempe, in the Tempe where? Oh yeah, Tempe.
I can't believe I'm gonna see Hugh Jackman in a few minutes. Oh my God! In your hometown. I know. He's gonna be right up there.
Hear the rumble, everybody.
Woo! You guys excited?
These movies happen because of the fans. And that is why we're here. So enough talking from me. Let's let the movie do some talking. Have a great night.
In this prequel to the hugely successful X-Men series, Hugh Jackman returns as Wolverine, a mutant who possesses superhuman abilities. The film chronicles his early life, the top-secret experiments that enhanced his abilities, and his relationships with many heroes and villains from the X-Men universe, including Sabretooth, played by Liev Schreiber. Fan enthusiasm for Wolverine is what brings the premiere here, and pleasing this loyal audience is critical. We asked the cast and crew about the process of satisfying fan expectations.
This character's been around for 50 years in the comics, and I'm always kind of so inspired and amazed at the level of passion they have for this character. And when
We said we were going to do this movie. They were already excited. When we announced this competition, you have no idea, thousands, hundreds of thousands of votes. And here they are all sleeping out overnight. I mean, I love it. Anyone who's passionate about anything, I love. But it's kind of cool when they're passionate about a character I love too.
You just got to respect the material.
Yeah.
You know, if you... That's all they want. You know, I think they just want you to respect the material. And if you do it, then you can't go wrong.
You know, they're great characters that have been created and have endured for decades. So if you're true to the spirit of the character, you're going to do right by the fans and do right by the audience too.
The fans might want to know that, you know, Gambit's eyes are red in the comic book. So we can't do that for a wide audience. But when he shows his power, his eyes are red. So we're paying attention to the core audience, but we're also making a wider picture. So I think the key is you can't take anything for granted.
30 years of Marvel Comics to choose material from. How do you choose the material that goes into this film?
Well, we chose a writer, David Benioff, who's a great writer, great Hollywood writer. He also happens to be the biggest comic book fan in the world because it's hard. What do you choose? What do you leave out?
We choose them all for their elements. For this movie, we chose Gambit because the fans really wanted him. Deadpool because it was Weapon X, and if you know the comics, he's part of the Weapon X program. And Blob because all of us have always wanted to do Blob.
Come on, Bob, for old time's sake, huh?
Did you just call me Blob? No.
When I came on, there was one thing that I felt strongly about, and that was to really work the relationship between him and the character Victor Creed into this brotherly relationship. And there's evidence in the comics for this relationship between Victor Creed and Wolverine. Some fans say they are brothers, some say they aren't. To those who aren't sure, I promise you this is the most wonderful thing because it just gives such an adrenaline rush to the emotional connection between these two. You know, it's like great, powerful, emotional stuff mixed in with great action. So I think Liev Schreiber and Hugh Jackman as sort of brothers are the scariest pair you've ever seen.
On Main Street, USA in Tempe, Arizona. How does it feel to be somewhere outside of Hollywood and the normal Hollywood?
So great, such a breath of fresh air, and to share this, I mean, these guys are why we're here. So to share it with them is awesome.
You know, in Hollywood where there are premieres all the time. Hollywood, New York, people are jaded. Oh, you're blocking the street. Get out of the way. Where can I park? Here, people are psyched.
You sit in an editing room for like a dark room for months and months and months, and you don't know, you do your best. Then all of a sudden there are these crowds. It's so exciting. I could not be more grateful to Tempe.
I gotta tell you, this is the best premiere I have ever been to. I've been to them all over the world. This is unbelievable because these are the real people who love the movies, who have made this character what it is, and to be out there and to show it to them first, it's what movies are all about.
Fans of Wolverine certainly are passionate here at this very special premiere. Maybe we should have every red carpet in Tempe, Arizona. For Fox Movie Channel, I'm Tava Smiley. Thanks for watching.